Under a sky stretched wide with promise, Amelia Grant stepped off the dusty stagecoach into the heart of Wyoming territory. She clutched her small carpet bag tightly, every heartbeat loud in her ears. This was supposed to be a new beginning, a place where a shy woman from a broken home could become someone's cherished wife, someone's steadfast partner. Instead, all she found waiting for her was humiliation, and a choice that would change everything. Because sometimes being overlooked is the best thing that could ever happen, and sometimes the quietest souls carry the fiercest strength. The wheels of the stagecoach groaned as they came to a dusty halt in the middle of Briar Hollow. Amelia swallowed hard, smoothing the wrinkles from her simple navy dress. She tucked a stray strand of golden hair beneath her bonnet, then rose, carpet bag in hand, to step down into the unknown. The town was small, barely more than a handful of buildings and a scattering of wagons. But to Amelia, it might as well have been a kingdom. She scanned the crowd of townsfolk milling about, searching for one face in particular. Walter Grady, the man who had sent letters full of promises, the man who had assured her that her quiet ways were exactly what he needed. Instead of welcome, she found Walter leaning against a hitching post, arms crossed, a sour scowl on his face. He barely glanced at her before shaking his head in disgust. "You didn't say you were like this," he said under his breath, the words slicing into her like cold steel. Amelia blinked. "Like what?" she whispered. Walter scoffed loud enough for others to hear. "Timid, skittish. I need a woman who can hold her own out here, not some church mouse who jumps at her own shadow." Heat flooded Amelia's cheeks. She tried to reply, to explain, but the words tangled in her throat, just as they always had. Before she could recover, Walter tipped his hat mockingly and strode away, leaving her standing alone, dust swirling around her boots. The onlookers murmured behind their hands, a few with pity, most with judgment. Amelia felt their stares like pinpricks on her skin. She had nowhere to go, no money for another fare, no family left back east. Only the battered carpet bag at her feet and the promise, now broken, that she could finally belong somewhere. The stagecoach driver cleared his throat awkwardly. "Need to clear out, miss? Ain't no loitering allowed at the depot." Amelia nodded numbly. She hefted her bag and stumbled toward the edge of town, tears burning the backs of her eyes. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. She didn't notice the man watching from the far side of the street. Not at first. Levi Dawson leaned against a weathered hitching rail, his hat pulled low against the sun. A quiet man. A man who had seen more storms than sunshine. He watched Amelia with thoughtful eyes, noting the tremble in her hands, the stubborn set of her shoulders. He didn't move right away. He knew what it meant to be discarded. He knew what it meant to stand at the edge of the world, hoping someone might see your worth before you crumbled completely. After a long moment, Levi pushed off the rail, boots crunching in the dust, and walked toward the girl no one else had stayed for. Amelia trudged down the main street, the heavy carpet bag bumping against her skirts with every dragging step. Her boots, already worn thin from the journey, kicked up little puffs of dust. Around her, the town kept its distance. Women glanced from their porches. Men muttered into their coffee cups outside the saloon. No one offered help. No one called out. By the time she reached the edge of town where the dry grass began to reclaim the dirt road, her arms were trembling from fatigue. She stumbled, dropping the carpet bag into the dust with a small gasp. She bent to retrieve it, and that's when she saw the pair of boots stop in front of her. Worn leather, dust-caked but sturdy. A shadow blocked the sun. Slowly, Amelia lifted her gaze to meet a face she didn't recognize. Levi Dawson stood there, his hands loose at his sides, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. His voice, when it came, was low and rough, like gravel worn smooth by years of rain. "Miss, reckon you could use a hand." Amelia straightened instinctively, brushing dust from her dress. Pride warred with desperation in her chest. She opened her mouth to refuse, but no words came. She simply nodded once. Levi reached down and lifted the carpet bag with ease. He didn't ask where she was headed. It was plain she had no destination. "Name's Levi Dawson," he said simply, as if that was all the explanation needed. "My place is a ways out of town. Ain't much, but it's dry and safe." Amelia hesitated. She was no fool. A lone woman accepting help from a stranger in an unfamiliar territory could be dangerous. But there was something in Levi's voice, a quiet steadiness, not coaxing, not pitying, that made her believe he wasn't looking to take advantage. He was just offering. She glanced back toward the town. No one had come after her. No one cared. "I don't have any money," she said, voice hoarse. "Didn't ask for any," Levi replied. "Ain't the kind of man to leave someone in the dirt." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Amelia squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and nodded again. They walked in silence for a while, the carpet bag swinging lightly in Levi's grip. His horse waited just beyond the last building, tied to a post near the old water tower. A sturdy brown mare with a patient look, much like her owner. Levi mounted easily, then leaned down and offered his hand. Amelia hesitated only a heartbeat before taking it. His palm was rough, calloused from years of work, but his grip was steady as he pulled her up behind him. She clutched the saddle horn tightly as he clicked his tongue and urged the mare forward. The town faded behind them, swallowed by distance and heat. The plains stretched out like a great ocean of gold and brown, the horizon trembling in the late afternoon sun. Amelia didn't speak. She was too busy fighting the lump rising in her throat. This wasn't the life she'd imagined when she answered that newspaper ad. She'd thought she'd find a husband waiting with open arms, a home, maybe one day children. Instead, she had a carpet bag, dust on her boots, and a stranger's back to lean against. And yet, there was a strange kind of peace in the rhythm of the horse's hooves, in the quiet of the open land. Levi didn't ask questions. He didn't press for her story or expect thanks. He just rode steady and sure, guiding them westward toward a cluster of low hills. An hour later, they arrived at a small homestead tucked into a natural hollow between two rises. A simple cabin, smoke trailing from a rough stone chimney, a fenced corral, a small barn leaning stubbornly into the wind. A garden plot, long since harvested for the season, lay fallow under the autumn sky. Levi swung down first and tied off the horse, then turned to help Amelia dismount. She slid awkwardly from the saddle, legs stiff from the ride. Her knees almost gave out when her boots hit the ground, but Levi caught her elbow without comment and steadied her. "You'll be wanting to rest a bit," he said, lifting her carpet bag and nodding toward the cabin. "Ain't fancy, but it's warm." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean. A pot of stew simmered over a small fire. A battered table sat beneath a single window, two chairs tucked neatly beneath it, a narrow cot in one corner, a rough-built shelf lined with a handful of worn books in the other. Levy set the bag down by the door and moved to stir the stew, as if he'd done it 1,000 times, as if bringing home lost souls was just part of his routine. Amelia stood frozen near the threshold, uncertain. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling smaller than ever. "You can have the cot," Levi said without looking up. "I'll take the floor." She blinked. I can't take your bed." His mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. "Miss, I've slept rougher places than a wood floor. Don't trouble yourself." Still, she hesitated. She wasn't used to this kind of kindness. Kindness without strings, without expectations. Levi ladled 2 bowls of stew and set them on the table. "Sit, eat, rest. Tomorrow we'll figure what's next." The chair scraped loudly against the floor as Amelia pulled it out and sat down. She stared at the steaming bowl, stomach twisting with hunger and uncertainty. Slowly, mechanically, she lifted the spoon and took a bite. The stew was simple. Beans, potatoes, a few scraps of salted meat, but it tasted better than any meal she could remember. Across the table, Levi ate quietly, neither rushing nor watching her. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Amelia felt something loosen inside her chest. Not safety, not yet, but something close enough to make her shoulders sag with exhausted relief. After the meal, Levi banked the fire, handed her a folded quilt, and settled himself on the floor with nothing more than a spare blanket. He didn't look at her again, didn't say another word. Amelia lay on the cot, staring at the rough-hewn ceiling, the weight of the quilt pulling her down. Sleep tugged at her fiercely. She fought it, afraid to let her guard down. But the last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the quiet figure of Levi Dawson, stretched out near the hearth, keeping his silent watch. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long, long while, she wasn't facing it alone. Amelia woke to the low crack of firewood being split. It echoed through the stillness like a steady drumbeat, grounding her in this unfamiliar place. For a brief moment, she lay there beneath the quilt, blinking up at the wooden beams above. The silence was different than back east. Deeper, thicker, like the land itself was holding its breath. She sat up slowly, unsure if she had truly slept or simply drifted in and out of exhaustion. The cot creaked softly beneath her weight, but Levi didn't glance her way. He stood just outside the open cabin door, sleeves rolled, axe rising and falling with deliberate ease. Amelia took a breath and ran her fingers through her tousled hair, then stood and folded the quilt. Something about the small gesture, returning what had been given, felt important. Inside the cabin, a pot of coffee sat near the hearth, already steaming. 2 tin cups had been laid out. Levi hadn't spoken, hadn't even acknowledged her waking. Yet somehow he'd prepared like she was always part of the morning. He came back inside, set down a small stack of split logs, and only then met her eyes. "Coffee's hot," he said simply.
Thank you.
She replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They sipped in quiet. Outside, the sun had begun to rise fully, painting the plains in hues of honey and brass. Birds stirred in the trees, and the wind carried the scent of sagebrush and damp earth. "You sleep all right?" Levi asked after a while, not looking at her. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the tin cup. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, soft but firm. "Quiet girls don't get far in this world, Amelia. You'll have to learn to be louder if you want to be seen." But she never had been. Not in Boston, not at the orphanage, not in those awkward tea parlor interviews where other women spoke with confidence, and she simply faded. Yet here, where no one expected her to fill a room or outshine the wind, maybe quiet could mean something else. Then she nodded.
Better than I expected.
"Good." He poured another splash into her cup. "Figure you'll need a plan." Amelia looked down into her coffee, the surface trembling slightly in her hand.
I haven't got much of one.
She admitted.
Not anymore.
Levy leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I ain't much for plans myself," he said, "but I do all right with starts." She glanced up at him. "My place runs fine enough for one man, but things get missed," he continued. "Chickens go uncollected. Fence posts get pushed over and stay that way too long. I could use help, not out of charity. I mean real help. Cooking, tending the place when I'm out on the range. Nothing fancy, but honest work."
You'd let me stay?
Amelia asked, voice tight. He nodded once. "Room's yours as long as you need it. If you decide to move on later, no hard feelings." A wave of something unfamiliar surged in Amelia's chest. Not gratitude, not exactly. Not pity either. Just steadiness. Like someone had finally seen her as a person worth the space she took up.
I can earn my keep.
She said quietly.
I may be quiet, but I know how to work.
"I figured," Levi said. By mid-morning, Amelia had rolled up her sleeves and started clearing the garden bed of last season's dead stalks. The soil was dry but rich underneath. She pulled weeds, set aside dried herbs, and used an old crate as a stool when her legs began to tire. Levi came and went from the barn and the corral, fixing a busted gate and feeding the stock. He didn't hover, didn't comment, just worked alongside her, as if they'd done it 100 times before. By late afternoon, they'd barely spoken 20 words between them. And yet, something had shifted. Not comfort, not yet, but a truce. A quiet understanding between two people who had both been left behind and were tired of it. As dusk approached, Levi carried a pail of water to the porch where Amelia sat peeling potatoes. He handed her a clean cloth without a word. She took it, her fingers brushing his for the briefest second.
You ever think about leaving?
She asked suddenly, surprising herself with the boldness of it. He stared out across the golden plains, the sun setting behind the hills in a blaze of fire. "Used to," he said, "back when I thought life owed me something. Now I reckon I just want peace where I can find it." She nodded slowly, her gaze drifting to the horizon.
I thought coming here would give me a whole new life. And now?
He asked. She looked down at her hands, the cloth in her lap.
Now I'd settle for a place where I'm not told I'm too much trouble to be worth the trouble.
Levy didn't reply right away, but when he finally did, his voice was firm. "You're not too much trouble, Amelia." She looked at him, really looked, and saw no hesitation in his eyes. Not pity, just truth. That night they ate together again, and after the dishes were cleared and the fire banked low, Amelia stood and faced the cot.
I'll take the floor tonight.
She said.
We'll trade off. It's only fair.
Levy gave a slow nod. All right. She settled herself near the hearth, quilt wrapped around her like armor. Levy stretched out on the cot, boots tucked beneath the frame, and neither said goodnight. The fire flickered shadows against the wall, and outside coyotes howled at the moon like ghosts calling home. Amelia closed her eyes. She still didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now she had a roof, a place at the table, and a man who didn't ask her to be anyone but herself. And sometimes, that's all a soul needs to begin again. By the end of her third full day at the homestead, Amelia Grant had blisters on her palms and dirt under her fingernails. And for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't mind one bit. Levi showed her how to patch a fence using thick twine and a hand-hewn stake. The wind tugged at her bonnet as she knelt in the dry grass, bracing the broken rail while he hammered it into place. "Keep your hands back," he warned, not unkindly. She adjusted her grip and nodded.
I'm learning.
"You are," he agreed. They worked side by side through the morning, pausing only to drink from the shared water flask Levi kept tied to his saddle. The land stretched endlessly around them, open and raw. Hawks circled overhead, and the occasional rustle in the grass reminded Amelia they weren't alone out here. Not really. This was wild country, beautiful, dangerous, and honest. After repairing the last post, they stood in the shade of a lone juniper tree. Levi passed her a small chunk of jerky wrapped in oilcloth, then bit into his own without ceremony.
This is harder than it looks.
She said, chewing cautiously. He gave a soft grunt. "The land don't care if you're new, but it teaches fast." She glanced at him, curious.
Is that how you learned?
"More or less. Trial, error, repeat." Amelia wrapped the jerky again and tucked it into her apron pocket.
And the errors?
He squinted toward the fence line, then finally said, "They leave marks." She didn't press. She could feel the wall in his words. Not anger, but memory, and maybe regret. They rode back in silence, Amelia perched behind him on the mare. She'd stopped gripping the saddle horn like her life depended on it. Now her hands rested loosely at her sides, trusting Levi's quiet control of the reins. That evening after supper, Amelia brought out the book she'd taken from the shelf on her first night, a worn copy of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. She sat in the chair nearest the fire, knees tucked beneath her, and read aloud while Levi mended a saddle strap at the table. Her voice was soft, uneven at first, but it grew steadier with each verse. The words filled the cabin like smoke, curling into corners, settling deep. Levi didn't speak, but his hands stilled. The leather strap lay across his lap, forgotten. When she paused, he said, "You've got a good voice for quiet things." She smiled, shy but grateful.
That's the first time someone said that like it's a good thing.
"It is," he said simply. Later, after the fire dimmed, Amelia lingered at the threshold of the cabin. The sky outside was thick with stars. A different kind of silence hummed out here. Not absence, but presence. Crickets, wind through dry grass, the soft snort of a horse in the corral. All of it wrapped around her like a blanket. "You planning to stay?" Levi's voice broke the quiet. She turned. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his silhouette outlined by firelight from within.
I don't know.
She said honestly.
But I'm not ready to leave.
He nodded once. "That's enough." She thought of the station where Walter had left her, the faces that turned away, the ache in her chest when no one had spoken up. And then she thought of this place, of the cracked teacup Levi had let her claim as her own, of the way he never pushed for answers, only offered space to find them. She looked back at him. "You're a strange man, Levi Dawson. Most folks just call me quiet." She raised an eyebrow.
Maybe that's what I meant.
He smiled then. Not the ghost of one, but real. Brief, but true. And it did something strange to her chest. Back inside, she laid the book down on the shelf and moved to bank the fire. "Cot or floor tonight?" Levi asked, reaching for the blanket. She looked at him for a long moment.
We can trade back.
He nodded. Fair's fair. She took her place on the cot, pulled the quilt to her chin, and listened as Levi settled across the floor. The fire cracked once, then went still. Amelia whispered into the dark.
Thank you.
He didn't answer right away, but just before sleep claimed her, his voice came low and even from the shadows. You were never the problem, Amelia, just never in the right place to be seen. And this time, the silence that followed felt like understanding. The first true storm didn't come with thunder. It came on a Tuesday morning, with the sound of hooves pounding the dirt and a knock on the cabin door so sharp it made Amelia flinch. Levi was already standing before she could move. He opened the door to reveal a man Amelia had never seen before. Tall, lean, and wearing the polished grin of someone used to being listened to. Levi Dawson, the man drawled, still hiding out up here like a ghost. Dale, Levi replied, voice flat. Didn't think you had business this far west. Dale smirked, taking a slow step closer. Funny. Thought maybe you'd finally crawled back into town after what happened at Laramie. Levi's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Sure was. But folks don't forget easy when a man walks away from a deal, or from blood. He turned his gaze to Amelia now, voice silk smooth. Shame. Thought maybe you'd finally found peace out here, Levi. Guess some ghosts come wearing bonnets now. Amelia blinked, caught in the edge of something she didn't understand. But she could feel it, the tension, the weight. Levi didn't rise to the bait. You've said your piece. You can leave now. Dale tipped his hat toward Amelia, eyes lingering a beat too long. Didn't know you were keeping company. Levi didn't flinch, but Amelia noticed the shift, the subtle tightening of his jaw. She's a guest, he said. That's all. Dale's smile didn't fade. Sure she is. He stepped inside without being invited. The air changed, thickened. Amelia stood near the table, hands tight on a dish towel, unsure if she should stay or disappear. What do you want, Dale? Levi asked, arms crossed. Just came from town, Dale said, sauntering toward the fire like he belonged there. Folks talking, about a woman showing up alone, about how Levi Dawson took her in. Levi's voice dropped a degree. And? And they're wondering why, Dale said with a smirk. Wondering what kind of arrangement you've made? She one of them mail-order types? Seems she got left behind. Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wasn't sure if it was shame or anger, but it burned all the same. She's none of your concern, Levi said. Dale turned to her. Miss, no offense, but men around here don't much like surprises. Women showing up, stories half told. Amelia stepped forward then. She wasn't sure where the strength came from, but it filled her bones like wildfire.
I'm not here for gossip.
She said, voice even.
I'm not here for a man's charity either.
Dale blinked. He hadn't expected her to speak. She continued, steadier now. Levi offered me a place to stay, that's all. I cook, I tend the garden, I patch fences, I earn what I take. Levi's eyes flicked toward her. Not with surprise, but something gentler, like he knew she had it in her all along. Dale chuckled. Well then, guess I'll leave you two to your little partnership. He tipped his hat again, mockery more than manners, and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence followed, heavy as thunderclouds. Levi stared at the door for a long beat before turning back to her. You didn't have to speak up.
Yes, I did.
She said. He nodded once as if that answer satisfied something deep inside him. Later after supper, he found her outside, sitting on the porch, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders.
He's not wrong, you know,
she said quietly. Levi stepped beside her, leaning against the post. About what?
About what people think. About what they'll say.
He shrugged. They'll say it anyway. Amelia looked out across the plains, where the wind tugged gently at the tall grass. I
didn't come here to be a scandal.
You're not. She glanced at him.
Then what am I?
Levi met her eyes. You're someone who got left behind and decided not to stay there. That silence came again, not awkward, not empty, full of things unsaid. You want to leave, he added after a moment. I'll take you to town. I'll help you start over wherever you choose. I won't ask questions. She shook her head.
Number, I don't want to leave. I just don't know where I belong.
He looked back at the horizon, the last threads of sunlight fading into indigo. Then stay until you do. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise, but it was something real. That night, Amelia didn't offer to trade the cot, and Levi didn't argue when she didn't. They lay in silence, each in their place. And yet something between them had shifted again. A thread pulled tighter. A storm passed through that wasn't made of wind or rain, but of doubt and pride, and the courage to face them down. Whatever came next, they would meet it not as strangers, but as two people who had chosen to stand beside each other, even when the rest of the world turned away. The first snow came early that year, just a dusting at first, soft as breath on the mountaintops, but it stayed. By morning, the frost had crept down to the valley floor, turning every blade of grass silver and still. The wind had changed too, sharper now, tugging at Amelia's shawl as she stepped out to gather eggs from the hen house. She moved slower these days, not from weariness, but from care. She knew the creak in the porch step, the way the door stuck slightly when the weather turned, the sound of Levi's boots coming up the path after a long day. This place had worked its way into her bones, quiet as the cold. Inside, she stirred stew on the stove while Levi repaired a harness by the fire. It was their usual rhythm now, not hurried, not loud, just steady, like time was no longer something to outrun. Levi glanced up, watching her move about the cabin. "You ever think about going back east?" Amelia didn't answer right away. She ladled stew into 2 bowls, set them on the table, then finally sat across from him.
I used to.
She said,
Thought maybe if I went back, I could start over in a place that already knew my name.
Levi raised an eyebrow. "And now?" She took a slow breath.
Now I think maybe starting over means letting go of the person I used to be.
He didn't smile, but the way he looked at her, like she'd said something true and right, was better than any smile. They ate quietly, the stew warming them against the chill settling in the walls. Afterward, Amelia reached for her book, The Same Worn Leaves of Grass, and read a few verses aloud while Levi closed his eyes and listened. When she finished, he stood and crossed to the small cabinet near the fire. From it, he took down a narrow box wrapped in oilskin and placed it gently on the table between them. "I meant to give you this a while back," he said. "Didn't know how." Amelia looked at it, then at him. "Go on," he said. She opened the box slowly. Inside was a simple silver pendant, not polished, not new, but beautiful in its quiet way. A single etched feather along its edge. Underneath it, folded neatly, was a deed. Her name was written across the top in Levi's handwriting. She looked up, stunned.
What is this?
"It's half the claim," Levi said. "The cabin, the land. Not a gift, not charity. I had papers drawn up in town. If you stay as an owner." Her throat tightened.
You don't even know if I want that.
"I know you've earned it," he said. "Every inch." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away.
You sure?
He stepped closer. "You fixed more than just fences here, Amelia." The fire popped softly in the hearth. Outside, the wind stirred the pine boughs like a lullaby. Her hand hovered halfway across the table. She wasn't sure what she was reaching for. Comfort, maybe, or certainty. 100 doubts pressed at her ribs. What if he pulled away? What if this ruined the quiet thing they'd built? She should pull back, but she didn't. And inside, Amelia reached across the table and laid her hand over his. Not a grand gesture, just touch, warm, steady.
I think I'd like to stay.
She said. Levi turned his hand under hers and held on. They didn't speak of marriage. Not yet. That wasn't what this moment needed. What they had was stronger than promises rushed. It was made of long silences, shared work, and the kind of respect that took root slowly, the way winter wheat did, quietly beneath the snow. That night, she didn't sleep on the cot. She didn't sleep on the floor either. When Levi banked the fire and turned from the hearth, she met him at the center of the room, barefoot and uncertain. He touched her cheek like she might vanish, and she leaned into the touch with the trust of someone who'd stopped running. They didn't rush. There was no need. The storm had passed, and for the first time, not just since arriving in Wyoming territory, but maybe in her whole life, Amelia Grant felt like she belonged.